Would you know that if there is a particular reason that when you first saw those storyboards moved you?
We all have moments where we feel alienated. I was not a popular kid. There's that to connect to. There's times when I felt lonely. I think everybody has that.
It's part of the human condition to want to connect and to want to know what's out there. See where Elio started and where he gets to towards the end of the movie is something I think and I hope resonates with people universally.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast, The Making of Stories. I'm your host, Jawad Mir. Today, my guests are Steve Bloom and Anna Wolitzky. They're the editors on Disney Pixar's most recent film, Elio, which opens today. It was a wonderful conversation with both editors. We talked about the film, the storyboards, the editing, meaning of life, and all the messages that are in the film. I totally enjoyed the film, and I'm sure that you will too. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Anna Wolitzky and Steve Bloom. I'll give you a little bit of context of because the film was supposed to come out last year, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And when I first saw the trailer, which was almost 2 years back or a year and a half back, it was one of the most interesting experiences because I was telling my sister, even just yesterday after I saw the film, and I sent her the image where there's a scene of him lying on the beach and aliens abduct me. I have been waiting for that moment myself for a long time because I would love to be abducted and go up there and see what's out there. I don't care what happens after that, but that resonated with me so much. I don't know if there were other people like that out there with me other than me, but that was really, really cool. I just thought the whole story, the plot is amazing.
Oh, wow, that's great. That's good to hear.
Yes, we hope there are a lot of people that will connect to that.
Amazing. So tell me, how and when did this all start? I know you guys both worked as editors and you've been at Pixar for a long time. And there's always many projects in the process, and people come on and go off and depending on things. How did both of your journey start on this project? Whoever wants to take it first.
Anna should start first because she started first.
Yeah, I can start. I started working on this film in October of 2020. I had been working on Turning Red, and Adrian and Mary Alice asked me to join, and it was during the pandemic, so it was an interesting time to start a film. And yeah, that's when I started. Steve, did you want to?
I was asked to come on in the last year when they were doing the changes.
Yeah.
It's already been 3.5 years or something for Anna, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So both of you work at Pixar, and is there some sort of obligation to say yes to every project that you're asked for as long as you're not busy with something else? How does that work? Because you're not like freelancers, right? Where you have the option of saying yes or no.
I don't think there's an obligation. They're, when shows are starting up, they post for lead positions, and this was something, this was something I was interested in working on just because I had worked with both Adrian and Mary Alice in the past on other shows, and it seemed intriguing to me. It was an original film that was interesting to me. So yeah, I applied and met with them, and we sort of connected there.
Super. Steve?
Yeah, I suppose theoretically there is an option to say no. I never have.
Yeah.
Yeah, when somebody needs help, I help.
help.
In addition to lead editor gigs, I've done far more second editor or third or fourth sometimes when they're in a crunch, just to help a project over the line.
Also for me,
we have a few lines.
Also for me, I'm so sorry, Steve.
Go ahead.
There's so many interesting projects to work on at Pixar, so we have a lot of wonderful options, kind of an embarrassment of riches. So it's exciting when we get to start a new project.
So has there been, since you mentioned that, has there been ever a time in the last 25 plus years where you started working on a project which you wanted to work on project, and then something else came about that sounded interesting, but you couldn't commit to it, and you're like, both of you guys.
Well, I will say that I was just since I was mentioning Turning Red, I was really enjoying working on Turning Red with Domi Shi and Lindsay, and it was a great show. I wished I could have stayed and finished that before I moved on to working on Elio, but they
Mm,
needed me to start, so was really enjoying that.
That was the
okay.
last show we worked together on.
That's right. And Steve, of course.
Steve, what about you? Same?
Uh, I don't remember ever leaving a show to go work on another one, except in cases where one show was being rewritten and so there wasn't work to do and they put me on another one. And I did a few of those where I would go back and forth between two
Mm,
projects,
got it.
between Turning Red and Lightyear, and then between B-Fry and something.
Both of you guys, since you guys worked on Turning Red, I mean, I know a lot of people who didn't like the film, but I really loved it, partially because it was set in my hometown, Toronto.
Oh,
So,
great.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I saw in there that kind of just brought back the 90s vibe and all that. So that was really, really cool. You don't get to see much of Toronto in Hollywood productions, which was, I don't think I've ever have, at least Toronto being shown as Toronto.
Right.
But
Yes. And
that
New
was
York a lot.
yeah, that was really, really cool. Um, Jumping back to
Domi from there, right?
sorry?
Domi Shi is from there.
Yeah.
So she
Obviously,
was,
it was her story, right? Her
yes.
childhood and everything. But going back to Elio, what were some of the challenges for both of you guys in terms of, you know, putting scenes together or the flow of the story or the arc? Obviously, there's a script, everything is in the process, but it's animation is a little bit different. There's always a film is being rewritten, editing anyway, but in animation, it's far beyond that. So if you guys can talk about that, some of that, that'd be really, really cool to hear.
Sure. Do you want me to start, Steve, or
Sure, go ahead.
um one of the challenges of working on the film it's sort of story-wise or
Yeah, like editing wise, and because editing, you're composing story anyways, right? So
yes.
what
Sure.
was that where you guys kind of got stuck and kind of had to go around it and figure a way out?
Well, it's interesting. I guess I would say the film is about a boy who is lonely. He's had, an experience in his childhood that has affected him greatly, and he wants to be abducted by aliens. He has an aunt who they're trying to figure out their relationship. She's a loving aunt, but so he wants to get abducted and go to space. And then this may be a little bit of a spoiler, but also when we were working towards the ending, sort of resolving the relationship between Elio and his aunt, and really kind of sealing their bond. We both wanted him to need and want to go to space, but also by the end we wanted him to want to come back and be on Earth with his aunt. So that was a bit tricky, sort of in Act One, to try to both, see um, what on Earth would make him want to leave, but also maybe make him want to come back. And that's something we sort of had to build throughout making the film. And hopefully we did that.
I certainly saw that, but Steve, go ahead.
These movies are kind of like a marathon. mean, we spend literally years trying to work the story. And in that case, we had an ending that we wanted to earn. And in previous versions, 6 or 8 previous versions of the movie, we do one like every 3, 4 months. Uh, we weren't earning it. And we had to tweak a little bit at the beginning, had to add a scene at the beginning, had to tweak stuff all the way through so that hopefully when you see the final movie, you feel like, oh, well, that's the way it should always have been. But it's really hard to get there. And we did have some trouble. One of the later things that we put on was the first scene, because people were asking, why is this kid so sad? Why does he want to leave? What is the deal with it? Where did his parents go? Why is he with his aunt? And we had been resisting that because we thought it was a little too obvious or a little too on the nose, or it would make the movie a little too much about grief. We didn't want it to be about grief. But once we put that in there and did a few versions of it, it works great. And you really are with this kid from the beginning. And that, is one of those moments where, oh, okay, that's how it should have been all along.
It really helped to sort of solidify his behavior. Why is he doing this? Why is he not rejecting, but why is he having trouble interacting with these other kids on the beach?
Where does his fascination with space come from?
Yeah, why space? And so, yeah, the adding of the prologue, which was something we had in a previous version of the film in our reels, it made sense to. Eventually, we realized it made sense to bring it back.
That's another thing. But a lot of times we'll have pieces that don't fit, and they can be good scenes, but they don't work for the movie. So we cut them out, set them aside, and then maybe a year later, things have changed enough so that piece fits now, and you can bring it back in some form.
Which I'm glad you mentioned that, because the film. I even told this one of the Disney Disney marketing person when I walked out of the screening, that she asked me how was the film. I was like, I was pleasantly surprised because it wasn't what I was expecting, because the trailers don't give away too much, right? Which I thought was amazing. And the prologue was awesome because here I was ready, as I said, it's a story about a guy who wants to be abducted. That's me. And then when it started, the whole tone of the film completely changed, not in a bad way, but more about, it was about this kid that we're gonna now follow, and we're gonna be with him from beginning to end. And that was lovely. I thought it was wonderfully executed, and it lasted like less than a minute or so, maybe that entire part, maybe a minute and a half, I would say.
Yeah, it's economical storytelling,
and those are the ones that connect with people always. Amazing. Let's go back to your careers. That we'll come back to Elio in a second. Steve, you mentioned briefly, but I would like to go into it a little bit more. Not necessarily when you guys started at Pixar, but your journey leading up to Pixar.
How far back do you want to go?
Well, what I'm always fascinated about, what is the moment in everyone's lives that leads them to where they are. There's that, sometimes it's an accident, sometimes there's a moment that you watch something, you read something, it connects with you, this like, oh, this is what I want to get into. So if you can just sort of talk about both of you guys, in whatever capacity, briefly or more than that, that'd be really cool to hear.
For me, it was accidental. I never intended to go into animation. When I moved into the San Francisco Bay Area, to San Francisco, following my then girlfriend, who is now my wife, so that worked out. But career-wise, not so much. It was in the early 90s, and I read about this new computer editing system called Avid, Media Composer. And I went back to LA and I took a class. And I started getting jobs with people that were using this new machine. And these were assistant editing jobs on documentaries primarily. And I remember getting calls from this place called Pixar, and they were working on a movie, an animated movie, and they were using the Avid, and they wanted somebody who knew this machine. And the word around town was that they were going through a lot of editors and they didn't really know what they were doing. And I was committed to these documentaries anyway. So that never worked out, which is kind of an interesting what if to me. Um, but then I was hired on James and the Giant Peach.
Mm.
They were looking for an avid editor. And that's how I got into animation with the editor, Stan Webb. And he asked me to come with him to DreamWorks after that. And I said no, because I wanted to be an editor. And I did a documentary by myself. And then he later hired me as a second editor on Ants
Oh, you worked on Ants, one of my favorite films.
at DreamWorks.
Yeah.
I don't hear that very much.
I've spoken to Tim Johnson quite a bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I worked
Yeah,
with Tim.
so yeah, yeah. But before I come to Anna, before you even got into accidentally animation, was there always a journey of being into films? Like, was there always a plan, or is it just like whatever? You didn't know what you were doing, and you just figured out
Oh no,
this.
I wanted to be a film editor, definitely.
But
Yeah.
what was that one film that made you or inspired you to go in that on that route?
For me, it was was going to be a scientist. I was going to be a biochemist. I was always a math science guy all through school. And for me, it was a film that I made in a class with classmates for a class project in my senior year of high school. And that was so much fun. And I think I did another one the next semester, and I did some editing of it myself. The guy who knew how to do it showed me how to do it with tape and Super
Yep,
8 film.
absolutely.
That was mind blowing. And so I went to the only college of the ones I'd been admitted to that had a film school, and I tried to get into there. And that was the journey. It was
Mm.
not something I was expecting, not something I was aiming for, but definitely the right decision. That's become
I
clear. This is what I'm good at, and I would not have been good as a biochemist.
But not only good at you enjoy it, which is awesome.
Yes.
Um, Anna, what about you? Let's hear your story.
Sure. I also came up into filmmaking and Pixar in a not quite straightforward way. I studied liberal arts in college. I was working, doing some nonprofit legal work. I had studied, other stuff, and but I had always loved photography, still photography, since I was in high school. And I had had a good friend from college who was starting to get into the film business in LA, and she was in post production, and she was talking about editing and sort of the idea of being able to take something like photography, visual arts, and combine that with storytelling really appealed to me.
Hmm.
So I took some film classes kind of on the side while I was working, and then I did some freelance work in live action film and production. And I was in the right place at the right time when Pixar was, uh, you
Taking
know,
off.
just taking off. Yes, and I had an opportunity to come in as a production assistant on Toy Story 2 through a friend of mine who was a freelancer. Um, Put me in touch with Edie Ichioka, who was one of the lead editors, and she hired me onto Toy Story 2, and I never left. I was an assistant editor for a long time. I've held every position in the edit department. Um, yeah, and it's just been a place where I've really enjoyed working. Kind of like Steve, I live in the Bay Area, so felt like the best opportunity in the Bay Area, and I still feel that way.
That's lovely. That's really nice. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Um, with Elio, what were some of the moments in the script or in the story or in the film in its final version that forget about editing, forget about storytelling, just as a human being, as an audience. What resonated with you guys the most that was more relatable, that really made you laugh because it was relatable, or really moved you in a deep way because it was relatable? Steve, you want to start that?
Uh, Trying to remember the movie. I've been working hard on another movie since then, so I've only got so much room in my brain. It's got to go out, and the other things goes in. Um, I always tear up at the very end, and this is after the goodbyes, but the part where the communiverse comes to Earth and they come down and all of the other people are experiencing that I find really moving. A lot of it has to do with the music, but the just the idea of uh, that contact, that irrefutable idea of the aliens are here, and the majesty and the beauty of that, of the communiverse. We had previous versions where everybody's memory was erased at the very end,
Mm,
and this is completely the opposite of that. Um, what else? There's a great scene where Elio and Gordon are just talking softly about their lives to each other, and
that's a nice moment.
that feels really uh, human, even though one of them's not a human. But the connection there is really obvious, and not it's obvious that they're connected, but it's not obvious that we're manipulating, right? It doesn't feel
Yeah,
manipulated. It feels real. It feels natural that these
yeah.
two kids just talk to each other and bond in that way. So those are two that get to me.
What about you, Anne?
Yeah, that's a great answer, Steve. Uh, I would also agree with all of that. And also just to say, Elio starts off, he's lonely, he's looking for connection, he's looking up at the stars. And you know, I yeah, I feel something there when he's sitting on his roof and he's kind of at a really low moment with his aunt. And he really has a lot of yearning for something to connect, someone or something to connect with. And um, for me, also, when Questa, when he gets thrown out of the communiverse, when he's sort of exposed and as not the leader of Earth, he lands in the water and he's sitting on the beach. It's like a quiet moment. He's he's just looking up at the stars again, and it's quiet, and he's kind of been expelled from everything he thought he wished for, and it's sort of a moment of just sitting with him. And then when he reconnects with his aunt also on the beach there, it's sort of the beginning of them coming together. And I always find that to be sort of emotional, the sort of the beginning of their bonding again.
That's
Yeah,
lovely.
the lights come on and it says aliens bring him back. And that was a thing that when they first did it in storyboards, I thought was really powerful. And it was
Yes.
just a matter of keeping that feeling.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Sorry, Anna, what were you gonna say?
Well, I just was gonna say, yeah, it was emotional already when it was storyboarded, and then between the layout and the animation, I think they really nailed that moment. And lighting, of course, it was beautiful.
So, and you guys don't have to answer this because this is not something I do occasionally, but because you're talking about these very powerful scenes, we connect to powerful scenes because sometimes without we don't know why we connect to it. It could be something that we're experiencing in that moment, and somehow it connects. Would you be willing to, and feel free to say no, willing to, and would you know that if there is a particular reason that when you first saw those storyboards or when you first read it or whenever that first experience with that moved you, why would that be? Was it something that you connected at a deeper level in your own personal life when you were kids or even now at the time?
I mean, we all have moments where we feel alienated.
Hmm.
I was not a popular kid, so that there's that to connect to. There's times when I felt lonely. I think everybody has that.
Yeah.
You don't have to have gone through the same trauma that Elio has to want to feel wanted, to want to feel included, to find your people. And he finds his people in space and then comes back and discovers that he's wanted there as well. Um, so that's the payoff for him, and it feels good. That part of me that was felt unwanted and felt alienated feels rewarded in those times.
I loved how you put that. Thank you so much. Anna?
Yeah, just to build on what Steve was saying, I think it's part of the human condition to want to connect and to want to know what's out there. And I think, yeah, I think it's part of the, everybody, as Steve was saying, everybody feels lonely at some point in their life, and to just see where he started, where Elio started, and where he gets to towards the end of the movie is something I think and I hope resonates with people universally. The idea of finding connection with your family, finding connection with community.
Amazing. Um, Thank you for sharing that, guys. I don't know if you guys, maybe I'm looking into it too much, but I found Lord Grigon, is it how you pronounce it? Lord Grigon?
Trigon.
Grigon.
Grigon. His persona, his voice, the character design reminded me of a lot of Emperor Zurg from Toy Story. I just felt like when I was watching him, like this could be an interesting story of them being distant cousins and in the galaxy far, far away. And I don't know if there was any talk about that in your meetings with the production team. Did you guys feel anything like that, or is it just me looking into it way too much?
I don't recall ever discussing if Grigon was related to Zurg.
No,
I
no,
know.
I know. That's just me
Oh,
saying.
yeah. Yeah, I don't recall that. But that's an interesting observation. Yeah, and then uh, what is it there? People have theories that every Pixar movie is connected. There's the whole Pixar universe, so I think some people would like that.
Do you want to talk about the Grigon's journey through the story? So he was a
Oh,
Sure.
different it was a
yeah, we
different
can.
character a little bit.
I would love to know.
Yeah, sure. In earlier versions of the film, uh, Grigon was actually one of the ambassadors, and he was always an antagonist in the film, but I'm not, I don't know if I can remember exactly everything that transpired, but at some point we realized he would be a better antagonist if he was trying to
Become
become an
one of them.
ambassador
Yeah.
instead of already being one, and someone who's making decisions about Elio. So yeah, we Steve, do you remember exactly how that came to be? I don't remember exactly, but in
It
one of
was
our
it was
sort of
difficult for him to make the turn from being Elio's friend to
right.
being the bad guy. And it was once we made him just the bad guy from the beginning, it was a lot simpler. And
Yeah.
there was you didn't have to do those story gymnastics to give him a reason to um, turn on Elio. And there
Mm.
wasn't the question of why is this guy in the communiverse in the first place? Because he never seemed to fit.
That's right, because the Communiverse is sort of like a intergalactic UN, more peaceful and sort of um, we were questioning, now I'm remembering, we were questioning why did they let this guy who is interested in fighting in war be part of this intergalactic community. So it was a little easier to have him removed.
And I think it works in the film because the very moment that you see him, he has this aggressive tone, and he's, just standing and talking to this whole um, group of people in the universe. And right off I mean, you can assume that he's a villain right off the bat, or you can assume that he's trying to become part, like he's trying to be accepted too, which is what Elio's journey is. He wants to be part of this thing for whatever right or wrong reason. But that's what I liked about that moment, is that acceptance that he's trying to do the same thing that Elio is trying to do, but on completely different spectrums.
And he
Yeah,
screws
that's
it up worse than Elio does.
Yes, yes, 100%, 100%. Um, since this film is about aliens, um, going into this film or in general, what are your thoughts about that? And considering what's been in the news for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm not trying to generate any theories or anything. I'm just curious about people's interest in this subject, because we always believe that, there's a line in the film Contact. I don't know if you've ever seen that, the Jodie Foster one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a line in that film, if it's just us, that's awful lot of waste of space, right? Just your thoughts at a personal level, if you're willing to share that, both of you.
I mean, it's hard to imagine in such a vast universe that we are the only intelligent forms of life. I do think that there are probably other life forms out there, whether we can make contact with them. I know there are groups like SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Extraterrestrial intelligence, yes.
People, really smart scientists, people are looking, but yeah, I mean, that would be pretty amazing if it were true.
Yeah, the vast distances of space make it less likely because of the amount of time it would take even for a signal to reach
Mm.
or close by. So I don't believe it's impossible. I believe it's likely, but whether we'll ever have evidence of that, I don't know.
Well, Elio did.
That they're so intelligent that they don't want to have anything to do with us.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very fascinating thing that, there have been so many movies, Close Encounter, Third Kind, Contact, and obviously
E.T.
the E.T. Independence Day, which is quite the contrary, and War of the
Clowns from Outer
Worlds.
Space.
Yeah, but I always wonder about that too, because then I think sometimes, which goes back to this film, Elio, is that, are we looking for something out there because we are completely missing what's here on Earth, or people
I think
around
that's
us?
the message right there. Yeah, you said it. Let's hire this guy.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yes, Elio is literally looking for friends off of Earth because he's written off planet Earth entirely. There's no hope for him. He's decided his family's gone. What's left of his family he rejects, or he thinks rejects him, and he's trying to find his tribe somewhere else, and he does initially.
Yeah, amazing. I know there's always projects that are not announced, which I'm not looking into yet. But anything that you guys that's been announced that you guys are working on, that's coming next year or the year after, if that's something that's openly known, I would love to hear that.
Well, I'm helping a little bit on Toy Story 5,
Okay.
and before I was on Elio, I helped on Hoppers. That was years ago, though. I haven't worked on it in its current version.
Okay.
And
What?
I think Anna is taking a well-deserved vacation.
Yes, I'm not working on anything new yet, but I will be when I get back from vacation. Not sure what yet.
Toy Story 5 comes out next year?
Yes, about a year from now.
Wow. That's what started everything. That's really cool. I mean, I was really happy with the first three. I wasn't really too keen to watch the fourth one, but I did enjoy the fourth one a lot. Um, I'll be honest, I don't want to see Toy Story 5, but I do want to see Toy Story 5. So it'd be interesting how what you guys have come up with in terms of the story, and really looking forward to that.
Well, yeah, Toy Story is our flagship franchise. It's what started Pixar
Yeah.
feature films, and there are beloved films. I have a lot of faith in the team that's working on it. They're working on making great film for everyone, and I'm excited to see it.
Of course,
As
Slinky,
someone,
Rex. Sorry, go
yeah,
on.
I worked on Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, so it's a franchise that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think it's close to a lot of people's heart because, I mean, obviously the timing at that time, people who grew up like in their teen years, and it was the first computer animation film, and Woody, Buzz, Slinky, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, I mean, Rex, all these characters are just so ingrained in our memory, kind of like how Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny did it in the 70s and 80s, for
Yes.
people of that generation. So like I said, I want to continue seeing Toy Story films, but because as a storyteller, I don't want to because I don't want to ruin it. But I know you guys would probably have something really amazing to tell, which is why it's happening. So really anticipating that.
Well, we'll talk about this in a year.
Yes.
We will. We will. Anything else you guys want to add on about your experiences on Elio? Any fun stories behind the scenes, um, working with people, or just the story itself?
Well, I'll just say we're really fortunate to have really great, talented directors. They were made it fun to work on. I had worked with Maddie before on her short film Burrow and on some other projects, and Domi, of course, on Turning Red. I was really pleased with how the score came out. I thought Rob did an amazing job with the score. I think it really lends itself to supporting the movie. Yeah,
And the sound effects by Jeremy Bowker,
yes,
really distinct, the Earth sound effects and then the Communiverse sound effects, building that sort of sound world where the sounds are alien, but they feel of a single world, I think is something that doesn't get noticed very often. And intentionally, we don't want to call attention to that stuff, but it has to, that's part of world building, is to make a sound for that place. I thought that
Yeah.
was great. Yeah, and Domi and Maddie, uh, uh, one of the things that they brought to it um, were the sort of horror movie elements that are in it that are kind of surprising, and sort of the comic relief with the other Elio, and those were some of the most fun sequences to work on, and some of the ones that worked right out of the box. Um,
I'm glad you talked about that because I was thinking about talking about that originally this morning and I forgot. But you brought it up. The whole part about the other Elio and how the ant gets suspicious that there's something up. It really resonated because as a parent myself, when there's silence in the house, I'm like, okay, what's going on? Something is off,
yeah.
right? And that pretty much I don't know if there was an intention in that in the writing, but that resonated, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of parents that something is off if the kid is just being super nice or there's silence and all that. So which was really nice.
And that's echoed with Grigon.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
notices right away as well.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, right off the bat. Awesome, awesome. Great, guys. Thank you so much for your time, for your work. I
Sure.
really
Sure.
enjoyed the film. My nieces, my nephew, my kids, they they were wondering what I thought, and I told them you have to go see it. So people would love it. People would definitely
Go
love
see
this
it in
film.
a theater because there's
theater,
so much
yes.
eye candy that the Communiverse is one of the most beautiful sets that we have ever built, and really need to see it on screen.
Thank you
All right,
so
guys.
much.
All right, have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.